To many people across the country, the 42 days lockdown was so helpful in curbing down the spread of the virus to the communities. But for Agnes Aromo, a news reporter working with radio patches in Gulu City, the lockdown was not only a barrier, but also a curse to her journalistic work. Being a freelance journalist with only one media outlet to contribute news stories, Aromo must work so hard to walk home with some little money at the end of the month. That though was not the case for her from mid-June to late July.
If I'm to describe the second phase of lockdown, it was so hectic. It gave us, actually it was very hard for me, because if I'm to see footing from home and then going to footing from home to workplace, from workplace and workstation to Northern Uganda Media Center, and again going to our various sources. It was very hard. If I'm to say, then we normally move, at least in a day we move for almost 20 kilometers.
President Yoweri Museveni imposed the 42 days lockdown on 18th June following the rising cases of the novel coronavirus in the country. He suspended the operation of public transport, including boda boda, which is the sole means of transport that Aromo depended on. The media was listed among the essential workers who could be free to carry on usual business. But for Aromo, she never thought of taking advantage of that fact for fear of being manhandled by the securities deployed to enforce the presidential directives. She was instead forced to adopt to the new normal in a bid to keep the pace with her male counterparts, whom majority own either a motorcycle or a bicycle that aided their movement during the strict lockdown.
Before, we used to go to the workstation like at 7, but immediately when they declared second phase of lockdown, I began leaving home very hard. I used to leave home like at 7, but then I began leaving home like sometimes at 5:30 or 6, because I will need to go to the workstation, work on the story that I've got the previous day, and then at exactly 9, again go to the field to look for another story.
The coping mechanism, however, left Aromo with piles of stories to be worked on, something that forced her to begin using Saturdays for clearing her archive.
Most of our work I normally do it during weekend. Like during weekend, I can work on at least three stories. That one is both in that one will be in both English and Luo version. So, working, sitting on computer almost for 3 to 4 hours gives you a lot of pain. Sometimes you won't even feel like sitting next to people.
During the lockdown, some journalists chose not to go to the field to interview sources face to face, but rather do a phone interview, not only to avoid getting exposed to the virus, but also dodge walking long distance. Rosemary Nana, another female journalist working with radio patches, she braced the hardship to get to her sources.
I'm someone who does not believe so much in phone interviews. Rather, I prefer meeting that person. Like I prefer one-on-one interaction or one-on-one interview. That's why I normally walk 7 kilometers coming to town and then 7 kilometers going back.
Anena could not forget one morning when she had to walk to the station on the rain to be able to finish her pending work in time before dashing to meet her sources she had fixed an appointment with.
I woke up at around 6, and of course, like as usual, I first wanted to go to the station since I had stories to work on or to compile before coming to the field or before meeting my sources, because I had an appointment with them. That day, when I woke up at 6, as usual, I did some domestic work. I left at around 15 minutes to 7.
And of course, like the rain started when I was on my way to the radio station. But unfortunately, from my place to the center, okay, along the way to my workplace, there's no other shelter. So that means if the rain gets you on the way, there's no way you have to persevere or you just walk on it. So that day, at around 7:15, that's when I was stuck on the way because it was raining heavily. I thought twice whether to get somewhere to first wait for the rain to stop, but of course I couldn't because I had stories to work on, two of them, and of course like I wanted to first work on those stories and then before meeting my sources in the afternoon. So I decided, at the end of it all, I decided to just continue moving. And of course, like there was no border. There was no border because we were still in the 42 lockdown. So I had to walk. I moved 1 kilometer, 1 kilometer to my workplace. Reaching my workplace, my clothes was all wet. And of course, like since I was determined to first compile my stories before coming to town, I got some camera. I placed it on the chair. I sat on it. Then I started working.
Lucy Geraldine Achi, the deputy news editor of Radio Ruping, a subsidiary of the Vision Group, disclosed that her only fear was getting attacked by the street gangs since she used to leave work very late in the evening.
My work requires me to stay late in office, like up to around 8, sometimes 8:30, and movement in town was not much of a problem because I had my identification and I would meet the security and security officials and they would give me a free pass. But now my greatest threat was the street gangs that are locally referred to as a who. Those were my biggest threat because at one point they threatened one of our reporters, though I did not face that, but that was my fear. Whenever I would be going back home, I would just hope that I don't come across those people and nothing happens. I think that was the biggest threat for me.
Diana Jock, a documentary officer at Refugee Law Project, says the challenges that the female journalists faced during the lockdown forced many of them to look for alternative livelihoods to boost their income.
The distance we were moving, it was very hard, and then timing, because news is all about timing. So the moment the time of a certain news is supposed to come and it has passed, it means that news is already what? It's already gone and it's dead. And yet you know that if you're freelance, you're paid per story that you're giving out. So it really affected, especially the female journalists, because we are having a lot of challenge. You could just imagine that at the end of the day, you have maybe only 10 stories that you have produced because of those challenges. At the end of the day, you have a lot of responsibilities. So it was challenging. It reached a point where even female journalists are trying like to divert themselves. Like, you know what? Instead of now handling only like basing on only journalism, let me again try to do another side business that can help us. So you find at the end of the day you are supposed to rush, do your story, and go and do another business to support you. And then another thing also, security-wise, it was not safe for us, the female, because we were kind of threatened. Because you see these people call a group, at the end of the day they were attacking. Because when they find you, they will not even think that you're a journalist or you're not. As long as you're a female, they might even threaten to rape you. So those kind of things, it was kind of a challenge for us, because instead of extending, maybe you have a story but you want to write and then drop around maybe evening. But now if you have a distance that you're moving to go to your home, by the time you reach your home, it's already dark. And those are some of the challenges that it was not easy for us, the female journalists, to manage the lockdown.